So, John, do you want to do this back here or when you go into light and see the sky out here? Well, I guess space.
I will go wherever you would like me to go.
Let's go over here. This is a better...
Would you like to boldly go there?
Yes, very funny.
I worked on that all Saturday morning.
Oops. I don't want to run into the blue people. Okay.
All right, John. My name is Galileo.
Isn't that pretty?
Yes,
Isn't
it's
that
beautiful.
pretty? Okay, cool.
Okay, John.
I'm just look around, see everybody.
Yep.
I keep actually moving in real life, which I realize I don't have to do.
That's right.
Intellectually, I understand that, but pragmatically, I feel like I need to. Okay,
I didn't set your height properly. You've still got a bend in yourself.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay, all right.
Let's just.
All right.
John, thanks for coming in. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us sort of your role in the Star Trek universe?
Surely. My name is John Billingsley. I played Dr. Phlox on Enterprise, also known as the show that killed the franchise.
Oh, that's not true.
Or as Dominic Keating likes to say, my show. I went to a charity event with Dominic Keating, and hello, little man. Somebody's touching the controls to make things happen. Oh, I see. Oh, am I talking to you specifically? No. Anyway, I went to.
Oh, you're talking to all of us.
Yes.
We hear you.
There's an actual person touching my controls, so I thought perhaps I was being instructed to talk to talk. I know. Yes, I know. I thought I was being instructed to talk to a specific avatar. Yes, I went to a charity event with Dominic Keating, and Dominic Keating introduced me to his friends and said, "Oh, hello, everybody. I want you to meet John Billingsley. He's on my show." Like,
Quite bold.
Dominic Keating's Adventures in Outer Space with an assorted cast of nobodies. Anyway, yes. Does somebody have a question? I'm happy to answer.
We've got a few for you. So,
excellent. Fire away.
What is it like being part of such a well-beloved and well-known franchise?
Well, look at me here. Here I am. I'm
Yes, that's
Avatar, talking to avatars from all around the world. What other show would give you the possibility of doing that?
That's true.
Almost 20 years after my show went off the air, I'm still managing to kind of live this whole incredible Star Trek life. It's there's nothing like it. It's incredible. Even when I got the job, I thought this is going to radically transform my life. And I've met so many extraordinary people from all around the world. I was telling Bonnie this morning, we've been able to go to New Zealand and Australia and Germany and Italy and Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, and all over the U.S. and Canada. It's been an extraordinary experience. I mean, I feel very blessed.
Anthony Montgomery was in here the other day, and he played Ensign Travis Mayweather, and he said it's like being a part of a big family. Do you sort of agree with that assessment?
Yes, and he's the crazy uncle. Yeah, Anthony's nickname was the human car alarm. Because you could hear him coming. I was always first on the lot because I had to have a 2.5-hour rubberhead application.
Ooh.
So I would be in the makeup chair, and I'd be listening to classical music, and I'd be reading the newspaper, and it'd be very quiet and peaceful. And you could hear Anthony screech onto the lot in his sports car, and you could hear him talk to everybody as he walked towards us. Hey, Charlie, how you doing? Hey, Bob, how's everything? I called him the human car alarm. It was like, okay, wake up. Anthony's here.
Brilliant.
The day begins. Yes. Also, Force of Nature Montgomery was my other nickname for him.
Well, so it's interesting that you brought up the prosthetics. We were talking to Susie Plaxton the other day, and she gave us a little bit of her prosthetics process and sort of experience with that. Can you talk to us about what that's like?
John Billingsley?
Yes.
Yes, John Billingsley's here.
John Billingsley's here. Where? Yes, I had relatively speaking, I had a pretty okay process. It was about 2.5 hours to put on. They realized over the years that if it was much longer than that, it made for extremely long days for the actor. And they realized, I think, with the Ferengi, that trying to put something, and the Klingons to a certain extent, trying to put pieces in your mouth was not helpful for an actor. So I was, I mean, you can imagine, it's bad enough you're wearing a rubber head, but when you're wearing basically a big set of false choppers, too, So fortunately, they did not go that route. At the end of the day, it took about an hour to take off because it is very, very, very tightly glued onto your head. A little uncomfortable, but there's one avatar who's doing like the splits here. Hello, Miss Avatar. This lovely avatar here. It's interesting as people are moving around. You're getting closer.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good.
I'm from Europe. The perception of distance.
No, please, little blue man. It's fine. I'm not little blue man. I mean, you're a lovely blue man.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also only worked 2-3 days a week, so it wasn't. Somehow I sunk into the floor. How did I do
Sit
this?
down?
Looks like you're doing some calisthenics.
I know, it's weird, isn't it?
Oh, he hit crouch.
Oh, here.
Yes.
Crouching, yeah.
He's crouching.
I'm crouching, and now I'm on it.
Turn you around.
Turn me around. Whoa, okay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, holy cow!
He's looking for the pen that somebody else lost earlier.
Oh,
That's right.
Okay.
Pen.
All right. Wow.
Or-
Have you all been in this? Have you done this a lot?
We
Yes.
do it all day. We have
do
it all
it?
hours.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
have it all in real lives. Yeah.
Wow.
You can make stuff in here. You can build worlds and anything you want. Your imagination can create
Yeah, we had
whatever
a-
you want in here.
Really? Can I build a new president of the United States of America?
Absolutely.
Is that possible?
You can animate him. You can make whatever you
Please.
want.
Oh my God, have mercy.
You could build a news desk, a White House. You could
Wow.
fake it and have him on the news.
Wow.
John has
Okay.
a very sensible, good ideas for this.
Oh yes,
That's what we
yes.
need to do with Sansar. Yes.
God have mercy. Yes, it was okay being a rubberhead because I only had to work a couple of days a week. If I had to work 5 or 6 days a week, I think I would have been undone by it. And I will say, at the end of 4 years, everybody else was very upset the show was getting canceled. There was a little part of me that went, "Yeah, that's too bad." Yeah, the rubberhead guys are never quite as
Not quite as sad.
easy about that stuff.
So, speaking of the rubber head and everything, I think Drex has a question.
Yes.
I have a whole bunch of questions.
Go
but
for it.
I'll just. So with Susie, we asked that as well. How do you feel about these conventions? People have sort of different takes on conventions. Some I've spoken to feel a little bit uneasy, and then they warm up after they do it.
Oh, I love them.
So how do you feel about interacting with fans?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love them. I mean, what an amazing thing to be able to travel the world on somebody else's dime and get to meet people who like you without even knowing you. I mean, you guys set a very low bar. You're inclined to appreciate me before you even know what a schmuck I am. I have to go to inordinate lengths to prove to you that I'm really an asshole. So I actually, no, it's great. I've had nothing but fun. I bring my wife with me, who was a Borg in the second season.
Whoa.
And also, if she was the littlest Borg, if you ever watched a show called Chuck, she played General Beckman. And so I started hauling her onto stage because she started heckling me from the back of the auditorium when I was doing my little dog and pony show. And then I got her a microphone and made her run around and answer questions. So now we travel the world and we have like a low vaudeville act. So I love it.
Were you into sci-fi when you got cast? Because that's also interesting to me. When some people are big sci-fi, nerds, if you will, and others are, they're working towards this is a gig, I'm going to take it. And they enjoy it, but they're not that much into sci-fi. Is that something where you progressed into becoming a sci-fi guy, or were you one from the beginning?
A little bit of both, because I was always a huge reader. So growing up, I had subscriptions to Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine, Analog, which used to be Astounding magazine. There's I don't know if all these noises happening here or are they happening in the real world?
I think this person knows you in real life.
This person must be new.
This person must be right next to you in real life.
Oh, okay.
I know them.
Okay.
This is Sherry, John.
Oh, okay. Hi, Sherry. Okay. Oh, wow. I'm still processing.
Lacey right here.
Oh, hi, Lacey.
Hey, what's up?
Wow.
Lacey's avatar looks ridiculous.
Your choices of avatars are telling. Can I just say?
That's
It's
their
like,
soul. That's their essence.
I know. I say hi. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely, sci-fi fan as a reader, less as a viewer. I'd watched the original series when I was a kid. It was on when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, but I hadn't really been, on top of the most recent iterations. I hadn't really watched Next Gen or Voyager or Deep Space Nine. So I have a dear friend who's like a huge Star Trek fan, and he kind of gave me like a crash PhD course in Star Trek. So like he told me who all the different species were and, how to pronounce different things. Being a Denobulan, he didn't know shit about that. It was like, I get to make that up, baby.
Got him.
Yeah.
That's good, because when fans come to you, I suppose some fans may have the whole backstory down cold, and do they often challenge you with inconsistencies of the storyline or something like that?
No, not really, because they know I will ridicule and make fun of them. Be warned, Blue Man. I'm
a journalist.
You're a journalist. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm the last person to address any questions about inconsistencies in the storyline, because it's very easy to get distracted by this particular buxom avatar who's kind of crouching and standing, and yes, never mind.
Oh no! All right. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Just give a high five.
We have time for one more question. We have time for one more.
I just wanted to know how you...
Last question.
With your crewmates, how you all got on together. We hear famous stories from other seasons. I haven't heard much about the Enterprise crew and how they get along and what sort of things they got up to, the comedy that was going on behind the scenes.
We were all friendly and pretty playful with each other. I mean, we weren't together as long as the other casts, and I think that makes a big difference when you're together with a group for 7 years. That level of familial bonding goes up and up and up. I'll say this: when the show was canceled, it was the end of 15 years of Star Trek for the crew. And that was a really emotional experience to see these people who had grown up together, marriages, divorces, babies, huge complicated lives lived out together as a family. Their goodbyes were at such a deep level. We didn't get to know each other well enough to share in that fully. But I love the guys. I love my fellow castmates. And one of the great joys of coming to conventions is to get to catch up with them. I get to see Connor and Anthony and Dominic particularly, because they'll go to an opening of an envelope. So you can.
Whoa! Yes.
Yeah. Can I also ask? Can you imagine acting in a world like this? Because the VR is set up to be a
I can barely stand up in a world like this. I thrust myself inappropriately forward with this avatar, merely intending to say hi, and suddenly I merged with her in an active avatar coitus, and I'm going to have to explain to my wife when I get home. And I don't know how to do it. It's like, Bonnie, I think I had sex with an avatar. And
there's totally potential to act in here. So.
It was completely inadvertent, relatively quick. I think innocuous, but still it happened.
All right, everybody. That was our last question for John. Everybody, clap and say thank you for coming in. We had such a good time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I look forward to meeting you in real life someday. I like the pumpkin guys jumping around.
Who is that? Too. Oh, Shooter.
Who is that? Hello, Pumpkin Man. Goodbye. And I'm not going to move or do anything for fear of breaking anything, or I'll just let people take things off of me. Bye.
Uh-oh. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Careful.
Bye-bye. What a very...
Want to help lift it up?
That's Lacey.
Bye.
Now he meets Lacey. Good job, everyone.
Back in the real world,
another meet and
where
greet
assaulting
accomplished.
women is not so such as a cavalier
I
thing.
know. All right, everybody say bye, Twitch.
Bye, Twitch.
Bye,
Bye, Twitch.